Part 101. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1002. Kill more pigs and earn some money. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Lily added another sentence. Zhang Hong'ai I just thought that she wanted to live a good life with him. When he saw her saying this, he nodded hurriedly. When I get married and live a happy life, I will definitely work hard. I didn't want to drink porridge, so I cooked dry rice. Lily bit her chopsticks while Zhang Hong'ai nodded repeatedly without putting the bowl down. Lily glanced at him and said, "There is no rice in the tank, and you don't want to be unable to support your wife, so you should quit drinking tomorrow and save the money." She talked for a long time, but the words were buried here. Zhang Hong'ai felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't say it. He lowered his head and took a big mouthful of rice, and thought for a while, how about I go find some work tomorrow, do it? Killing pigs and selling meat can actually be considered a living. He has been a butcher for several years. If he could live a down-to-earth life, he would not end up in a shabby house with 2 rooms now. But firstly, he can play with his brothers, and secondly, sometimes if there is any crisis among friends, he will throw away the money he has in his hand. He was cruel and rogue to others, and his reputation among the public was not good. Some ordinary people were afraid of him, but he really had nothing to say to his brothers. When Lily asked him not to go out drinking again, he hesitated. He didn't want to break off contact with his former friends, but he thought Lily was right. In the past, he was able to feed himself and the whole family was not hungry. Now that there are more people in the family, even if he is not worried about himself, he should think about Lily. After thinking about it, he decided to find another job. Anyway, I have all the strength, and the county is short of manpower. I will go there one day. I heard that Wang Laoxier in the Yamen can't stand it anymore, and De Liuze wants to recommend it. I'll go. What did he mean by Wang Laoxier and De Liuze? Lily could only guess out of thin air that these people should be his friends. He finished a bowl of rice and licked it. His mouth was obviously not full yet, looking at the way Lily was still holding the bowl and chopsticks. Some couldn't help it. Fast food. He is tall and big, and he should have a big appetite. He used to work alone to support him, but now he has to support one more person for no reason. In addition, Lily was still sick after entering the mission during this period, and he ate again. A few pills. It obviously put pressure on him. Lily sighed, picked up the bowl and gave him half of the rice. He frowned as if he was about to get angry. Lily held the bowl and said, "I can't eat that much, but Mr. Wang, who is Xier? Who is De Liuze?" Zhang Hong'ai lowered his eyelids, and there was an indescribable look of forbearance on his big, dark, and fierce-looking face. His lips were trembling, as if he was a little dazed. Lily's action just now made him silent. After a while, he stood up, poured the rice in the bowl into Lily's bowl, stood up and walked towards the stove. "Go, the sparks in the stove haven't been completely extinguished yet." He put a handful of firewood into the stove and plucked it twice. The fire ignited immediately, and there were still some rice cookers in the pot that had not been shoveled clean. He took a ladle of water, poured it in, and smashed the rice cookers with a shovel. "I'll eat what I have. I'm a woman, with long hair and heavy thoughts. I'm strong. Eat less and I won't starve to death. You look like a kitten. You can't even hear your voice clearly when you speak." His face reflected the fire looked a little red, and the pot was boiling. The water filled the pot with the rice. Once it was boiling, the heat was rising. He shoveled it twice and added a large bowl full. Then he sat back on the table. "Wang Laoxier is from the Yamen and is the executioner." After he finished speaking, as if he was afraid that Lily would not understand what executioner meant, he added, "He chops off people's heads. There are many slaves and criminals in Yingzhou. In addition, there are many foreigners mixed in, and there are many people who commit crimes. Sometimes the army can even catch spies. In response to this situation, several local emperors in Yingzhou they were all beheading people on their own initiative, and there was no need to report it to the criminal department of the capital. It is precisely because of this that many people have died here, their lives are not valuable, and the people have long been numb. The reputation of executioner is not good, and most people still use this title to curse people. In other places, this profession is usually passed down from generation to generation, but because of the special nature of Yingzhou, too many people died, and there were not enough executioners. Some people who don't do well can't be beheaded even after 3 or 5 days of beheading. Zhang Hongii is very strong and courageous, and he has a strong evil spirit. The Daliozi he mentioned are his friends in the market. Was working as a detective under the Yingzhou County Sci-fi at this time, so he had connections and just recommended Zhang Hongii. The name of this profession is unpleasant and scary. Many people think it damages one's moral character and are reluctant to do it. Zhang Hongii is not so worried. He just doesn't like to be restrained by others. He doesn't like to eat or do public things. In the past, he kept pushing, but now that Lily asked him to make money, he became somewhat interested. When Lily heard that he was going to be an executioner, she felt a little uncomfortable. This guy talked about killing people in a normal way. No wonder Lily Jo in the plot was afraid of him. Lily poked the rice with chopsticks, but Zhang Hongii didn't seem to realize what he said. Anyway, killing a pig is killing, and killing a person is killing. At least you can make a legitimate living, earn more money, and don't have to worry about starving. Killing pigs and killing people are two different concepts. If you want to make money, you can think of other ways. Why don't you look at it again? Lily was not afraid of killing people. She just heard him talk about beheading in such an understatement. After thinking about it, she persuaded him to endure it. Zhang Hongii only regarded her as her. He was scared, and regretted that he shouldn't have said this in front of the timid little lady. He heard that she came from a wealthy family, and she probably didn't like hearing about these fights and killings. He thought about his humble background and being illiterate. For half a fight, he thought about how she had just cooked and made a fire, and how she had rushed half a bowl of rice for herself. After his parents died, no one had ever been so kind to him, even if he knew that Lily was actually raised by him, and he should have treated her so well. He was better, but Zhang Hongii was still a little moved. In fact, he was dispensable to this wife before. After all, she bought her for 5 cents, and she just had to drink less for a few days. When the people in the post house sold her, they almost sold her as a dead person. He just didn't want to throw the body away. He thought of treating a dead horse as a living horse doctor, but he didn't expect to revive her. He originally thought that it would be good to carry on the family line from now on. This daughter-in-law would definitely be afraid of him, but he didn't expect that she looks timid. Not a young man, dare to negotiate terms with him. Zhang Hongii is not a good person, and he has bullied good people in the market. He has also been involved in many fights, but he does not have a bad conscience or a rotten liver. If a woman doesn't like him, she just needs to tell him. He may not force it, but now he is really hesitant. This little girl makes him a little reluctant to let go. With more people in the family, it becomes like a family. Someone cooks and cares about him. Not full, and thinking that he was not good enough for her, Zhang Hongii held the half bowl of glutinous rice balls and suddenly felt that he couldn't eat any more. Tell me, what is your name? The people in the post house said that your surname is Zhou, and you are named Zhou. Who else is there in your family? What do your parents and brothers usually call you? Zhang Hongyi's heart was filled with confusion. A feeling of frustration rose from his heart, but he was used to refusing to admit defeat. Although he realized that he might not be worthy of this official lady, he was not discouraged. Instead, he began to ask Lily, Don't talk about those things. At this time, people only call women by their surnames and don't care about their first names. In the plot, the relationship between Zhang Hongyi and the original owner is not close, and she has never been asked about her name. In the early stage, Zhou Beihe was afraid of him like a tiger, but as time went by, he didn't care about her. Patience talked to Lily Zhou a lot, and the two of them could not exchange more than 2 sentences for the whole day. In the early days, everyone called Lily Zhou Zhou's family. Later, those who interacted with Zhang Hongyi called her Zhang's family until Zhou Beihe's death. Zhang Hongyi didn't know her maiden name either, but for some reason Zhang Hongyi suddenly remembered to ask. Seeing him throw away the bowl and chopsticks, Lily was a little surprised. Zhang Hongyi never took things to heart. He ate neatly and snored when he lay down. At this time, he didn't even eat. He just listened to his questions. After saying that, she also put down the bowls and chopsticks. My surname is Zhou, as you know. My name is Lily. The Zhou family comes from the ancestors. Because at that time, the ancestors learned the art of kingship and taught the prince's meritorious service. He was granted a title and was hereditary for 5 generations. Lily told the original owner's life experience. Zhang Hongyi felt a little chilled when he heard about the king's art and the title. He grew up in Yingzhou, and the biggest interaction he had with was the high-ranking police officer in the Yamen, the county magistrate. He had never seen such a person before, and he didn't expect that a wife would be born in the palace. No wonder she didn't want to marry him. Zhang Hongyi felt happy and sad at the same time. What he was happy about was that he had unintentionally bought back a criminal slave. The people in the post house only said that he was a criminal. He originally thought that at most he was an official's wife. She's just a daughter, how could she have imagined that she was actually a young lady? Lily briefly talked about the situation at home. After Zhang Hongyi knew her origin, he couldn't listen to the rest of the words at all. He drank the rice cake paste in the bowl as if it was chewing wax, washed the pot himself, and watched Lily clean up the bowl. He was holding chopsticks and his face was gloomy and uncertain. The two of them didn't speak again. Lily was worried about the original owner's wish, but Zhang Hongyi didn't know what he was thinking. When the two of them lay on the bed with their clothes on, he was obviously much more restrained. Before dawn in the morning, he got up and went out to kill pigs and sell meat. He came back before Lily had finished a round of physical training. After getting along with each other for the past few days, Lily has figured out his general pattern. He usually comes back before noon when selling meat, but he came back so early today. There was still more than half a piece of pork in the basket he was carrying, and a pile of palm leaves on the other side. Throwing them around in a mess. He opened the door. In the morning, the lily had been boiled in water and mint leaves soaked in it to cool down. It was not completely cool yet and was being handed to him to soothe his throat. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1003. Why did you come back so early today? The meat in the basket hadn't been sold out yet. Obviously, since he had picked it back, he probably wasn't going to sell it anymore. He took the water and drank it in one go, then turned over and rummaged through the basket. He turned the pile of palm leaves into a mess. He found something wrapped in sansan leaves, spread it out in the palm of his hand and carefully opened it. Inside was a bunch of red rope and a wooden comb. Zhang Hongyi's eyes rolled around, but he didn't dare to look at Lily. His tone was a little stiff, and he said in a rough voice. Don't worry about that. Your hair is messy. Comb it up and tie it up with this. If you earn money in 2 days, I will buy you what kind of floral cloth you like. You can make your own clothes. Lily didn't expect that he would buy something for her. Although it wasn't anything expensive, Zhang Hongyi didn't have any money left in his hands. He hadn't sold out the meat today. Obviously, These two things were all the copper he earned today. She was stunned for a moment and did not reach out to pick it up. Zhang Hongyi seemed to be angry and picked up the thing and stuffed it into her hand. My surname is Zhang, I don't have any ability. Although I can't let you live the same life as before, I can't let you live the same life as before. I'll miss you, so take it with you. I'll have meat for lunch and buy some millet. I'll go pound it later. After he finished speaking, he kicked the basket, and there was a sound of grains being knocked inside. He had a somewhat proud expression on his face, but there was also a trace of embarrassment hidden in his eyes. Seeing that Lily's long hair was just tied up with a cloth, he looked like he wanted to reach out and touch it, but he didn't dare. Would you like me to comb it for you? He swallowed, but in the end he still couldn't hold it back. Asked. Lily glanced at him. He lowered his head and kicked his toes on the ground. Zhang Hongyi could buy things for her. This was something he had never done in the plot. It was considered him. Lily tried her best to express her goodwill, but she didn't want to dispel his enthusiasm and poured cold water on him. Now the two of them are temporarily living under the same roof. If the relationship can become better, it will be beneficial to you. What's more, combing her hair wasn't a big deal, so she just paused for a while and watched Zhang Hongyi pretend to be casual, but his eyes were fixed on her movements. He looked as alert as a rabbit. Lily nodded, and his whole face lit up. The heights of the two were unequal. The original owner was petite and delicate. Her body was thin after her family fell into decline, which made her look even smaller. Zhang Hongyi was taller and taller. At a height of 1.9 meters, Lily stood in front of him. He wanted to comb Lily's hair without her having to squat down at all. Seeing Lily nodding, Zhang Hongyi was a little excited. To be honest, this was not the first time he had touched this little lady's body since he brought her home, even when he was taking medicine and feeding her. When was there not a time when he hugged and lifted me? But this time it was different. This time Lily just agreed to let him help comb her hair. However, Zhang Hongyi felt that his hands were trembling with nervousness, and he secretly cursed himself for being useless. In the past, when he went up the mountain to chop wood, kill pigs, and fight, his heartbeat had never been so fast. Cold sweat broke out in his hands, and the comb in his hand almost broke. He quickly changed his hand, rubbed his right hand on the clothes several times, and then carefully lifted up a strand of Lily's hair. He had a pious expression and held it quite well, but because of his nervousness, the comb suddenly got stuck in the hair. During the period, I tried several times, but somehow, I couldn't dial it out. As soon as he exerted force, Lily began to cry out in pain. A few times, he even pulled several long hairs out of his palm. Zhang Hongyi was afraid of being seen by Lily, so he quickly clenched his hair and threw it behind his back. The hair was thin and smooth, not very similar to his straw-like head, but it was too long. In addition, Lily didn't have a comb during this period, so she just combed it with her fingers. Zhang Hongyi had never combed it before. He was nervous about his hair. As soon as it got stuck, he wanted to force it out. However, his weak strands of hair could not stop him. He felt that the hair was broken before he even exerted any force. Hey, okay, don't touch it, I'll do it myself. Lily was pulled by him until her scalp hurt. She stretched out her hand to touch it, but he grabbed her hand. He didn't have any strength in his hand. It was so heavy that he pulled the back of Lily's hand so hard that it hurt. He grabbed it without letting go. It wasn't until Lily started to struggle that he seemed to react, and hurriedly let go of his hand as if it had been touched by burning coals. What's the hurry? The comb was getting tighter and tighter on her hair, and now it was like a pile of dead knots. Lily urged him again. As soon as Zhang Hongyi tried to remove it, she started to cry out in pain, and he muttered, I don't know where women can be so delicate. It hurts when they pull their hair like this. He was still complaining, but Lily couldn't help it anymore. I'll comb it myself, don't do it. It'll be fine. As he was speaking, his hand shook and there was a click sound. He pressed Lily's head with one hand, and with the other hand, he grabbed the comb and pulled it hard. The hair wrapped around the comb was cut off at the sound, and a small strand was tightly wrapped around the top. Lily only heard the sound of hair breaking near her ears. Her head was pulled back by him, but because of his hand holding it down, she couldn't move at all. Her scalp was burning with pain, and she let out a gasp. When he heard the sound and saw that a strand of hair was missing from the back of Lily's head where her hair was pulled off, Zhang Hong'ai was dumbfounded. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that he was in trouble this time. He was a little dazed. Lily endured the pain and stretched out her hand to touch it, and her face turned dark. Yes, it was you who urged me. I was in a hurry. He explained a few words, and Lily turned her head and stared at him coldly, making him feel more and more guilty. I will practice it 2 more times, and I won't do it for sure. I will pull your hair again. His dark face was covered with cold sweat all over his forehead. He was so nervous that he didn't even dare to look at her. Lily's heart was filled with unknown anger. Before he could finish speaking, she subconsciously reached out and swiped at his body without even thinking about it. He subconsciously wanted to reach out, but as soon as he stretched out his hand, before it could reach Lily's palm and grab her, the palm turned into a claw and blocked his body. Oh, don't be angry, don't hit me, I won't touch you. It's hair. It's okay that he didn't say this at the moment, but when he said this, Lily became even more angry. His palm was like an iron palm, and he slapped her. He didn't feel anything, but Lily's palm felt burning and painful. She slapped her twice, but Zhang Hong'ai blocked it with his hands. Lily looked around, but he was still saying earnestly, I can't help you, my hair was torn off by you. Aren't I also inexperienced? It will be all right next time. After living with him for the past few days, Lily has figured out his character. He may not have a good temper. He is not a good person, but he is not a pure bad person either. He seems to be fierce and unreasonable, but in fact he is not. They just know how to act recklessly. Lily listened to him without saying a word. When she saw the sickle placed under the eaves, he ran over and picked it up after losing it. Zhang Hong'ai wanted to explain, but when he saw that she had even taken the knife, his eyelids suddenly jumped. Stand up. Don't take the knife, lest you hurt yourself. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Hong'ai saw Lily charging towards him with a knife. Zhang Hong'ai quickly moved his legs and ran outside. He was tall and long-legged. He ran to the courtyard door in 2 or 2 steps, stretched out his hand and held the door. Clang clang, it closed with a snap. Open the door. Lily was locked in the courtyard and knocked on the door with the handle of a knife. He was holding onto the door lock outside, not daring to open it. When he heard this, he hurriedly shook his head. Don't open it. Lily sneered twice, stretched out her hand to touch the back of her head, and held back her anger. I don't believe you can squat outside for the rest of your life. Zhang Hong'ai did not admit defeat. After hearing what she said, he quickly answered, I don't believe you can keep it forever. After saying this, he seemed a little angry, and his voice gradually became louder. This is outrageous. A little girl dares to chase me with a knife. What does it look like when someone sees you? Fortunately, you are still literate. You dare to be so fierce to a man. I have learned 3 things from you. He didn't know what to say just now. When Lily stretched out her hand to hit him, it was clear that he could subdue him, but she didn't know if she felt guilty for pulling her hair, and on top of that, she was afraid of her as a woman, with her petite body and willow-like waist, as if he was. It seemed like it would break if applied too hard. He could take half of her life away with one slap. When he raised his hand to resist, he stopped again. At this moment, someone accidentally chased him into the street. Fortunately, no one saw him. Otherwise, If someone found out that he was kicked out by his newly married daughter-in-law, his reputation would be ruined. How can a daughter-in-law hit her own man? Is there any royal law? He muttered in his mouth, and knocked twice on the door with the handle of Lily's knife. He did not dare to make a sound again, and after a while he muttered, "I'm not hiding outside the door because I'm afraid of you. I just don't want to get to know you. Otherwise, I would have gone out to drink and locked you in the room so that you couldn't come out. You're just going to drink, and you won't get half a cent out of your body." Lily's scalp was still hurting. She heard Zhang Hongyi muttering outside and replied to him. Seeing that he was holding onto the door and refusing to let go, he had no strength. No, the door was pulled tightly by him. She couldn't pull it open at all with her little strength. In the end, she stopped pulling it. She tied the door with her hand and tied the sickle to the door so that he could pass through the door. When Jiu saw it, he turned around and entered the yard. He picked up the leftover meat that Zhang Hongyi sold in the morning, burned the hair on the pork, and cut it into small pieces. I wonder if he had eaten potatoes yesterday. He felt that the taste was not bad. When he came back, he put it in the basket. Some potatoes with mud and leaves were also placed, and Lily took them out and washed them. She was preparing to light a fire for cooking. Zhang Hongyi read for a long time outside the house without listening to her voice. He pushed the door but there was no movement. He opened the crack in the door and looked in. He saw a sickle hanging dangling in front of him. He quickly retracted his head, thinking that something was not right. He stood up and looked inside the wall. Lily was making a fire in the room to cook, and was no longer guarding the wall. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1004. The broken roof of my house, which was always deserted after I returned home, now started to slowly rise like smoke from other people's houses. Zhang Hongyi held the comb that had tangled a lot of her hair in his hand, looked at it, and suddenly covered his face and started laughing stupidly. Lily was still angry at this moment. If she was asked to open the door, she would definitely not open it. Looking at the wall of his house, which was not too high, he stood up and took 2 steps back, spitting into his palms and rubbing them. After taking a few steps forward, the strong body suddenly jumped up like a monkey. With his palms on the top of the wall, he jumped over the nearly 2-meter-high wall and jumped back into his own courtyard. Lily was still lighting a fire in the house at the moment. When she heard the noise outside, she happened to see him landing firmly. When he saw Lily cooking, he consciously carried the rice into the yard to pound the rice. Lily ignored him. As soon as the meat fell in the room, the aroma of hot oil came out. There was no seasoning at home. But the advantage is that Lily's cooking skills have reached an advanced level, and only adding salt brings out the original taste of the ingredients. Lily put the peeled, cut, and washed potatoes into the pot and added water. It's stuffy together with the meat, and the smell goes straight into people's noses. Zhang Hongyi was cautious when he lowered his head and carried the pounded rice to enter the house. I don't know if he felt that he was in trouble that day, so he consciously didn't go out in the afternoon. He built a shed with the wood particles chopped yesterday, and woven bamboo mats outside to hang, and covered his head with grass. A simple shower room was completed, and he made 2 benches from the remaining wood and placed them in the house. The wooden bed Hongyi originally slept on was indeed too crowded. What's more, Zhou Beihi's body is not yet 15, and she is a bit younger. Because of her thinness, the 2 of them can barely sleep together, but the bed is still too small after all. He is now only supporting half of his body and cannot move. The 2 stools were prepared for him to use as a bed. As long as he wove a bamboo bed to make a bunk, the 2 of them could sleep in 1 room each. Roommates again. Tomorrow I plan to invite Deliozi and the others to my house for a meal. Although Lily didn't say anything about Zhang Hongyi combing his hair that day, Zhang Hongyi somehow always felt that he was short in front of Lily. For a while, when talking to her now, he was still looking at her expression with his eyes. You should prepare well so that I can put things in place. The thing he said he wanted to implement should be what he said a few days ago, to be an executioner. But after Lily mentioned him last time, he didn't mention it again for several days. Unexpectedly, it actually seemed like he agreed. Lily frowned. Zhang Hongyi doesn't go out drinking recently, nor does he eat, drink or get into trouble with a group of friends. Staying at home every day, although the money earned is not much, it is enough for the two of them. Unexpectedly, he has not given up on being an executioner. Lily is not taboo about this profession, but she is not afraid, which does not mean that at this time people are not afraid either. Executioners don't have a good reputation. The craftsmanship is also passed down from generation to generation, and he does this business. It will be difficult to clean up your reputation in the future. This person is not a bad person. Lily has no intention of spending her whole life with him. Naturally, she has never thought of having children with him. He is already scary enough. If he really does this, which daughter will do it in the future? Really marry him? If he cannot marry anyone else, he will have to remain a bachelor for the rest of his life. At any rate, she was being supported by him for the time being, eating and drinking from him. Naturally, Lily didn't want Zhang Hongyi to end up like that. As soon as she frowned, Zhang Hongyi saw it. He only thought that Lily was afraid of this profession. The luster in his eyes dimmed, but then his eyes fell on Lily. She was wearing a shabby and ill-fitting jacket. That jacket, the skin was patched, and the original color could no longer be seen. It was torn in many places, revealing gray-black cotton wool, which made her skin white and somewhat transparent. Lily's hair was tied up with a red rope, and she didn't have any extra clothes, but her pale palm-like face still looked extremely beautiful. She didn't have any fancy clothes or jewelry, but she probably had her birthplace on display there, and her elegant demeanor didn't look like she should be sitting in this shabby room, eating porridge with him, and there wasn't even any food in front of her. She didn't want to be the executioner. Her frown and eyes revealed this, but Zhang Hongyi didn't want her to have a bad life with him. He gritted his teeth and pretended not to see Lily's disapproval. I told you, you don't want to make trouble for me in front of my brothers again, let alone hit me. Chasing me with a knife like last time must never happen again. As he spoke, his expression became serious. Men are God, women are, ouch. Before he could finish his words, Lily stood up and slapped him on the forehead, making a snap sound. The beating didn't hurt, but he still screamed and his words were interrupted. Apparently he didn't expect that. One moment he had asked Lily not to hit him, and the next moment he was beaten again before he finished teaching him a lesson. He was a little bit angry from shame. I'm telling you, forget it this time, it won't work the next time. He trailed off, and Lily stretched out her hand to slap him again. This time, Zhang Hongyi was quick and reached out to cover his face, and Lily slapped him. When it reached the palm of his hand, it was soft and soft. It was no better than scratching him. His face turned red. You little bitch, how can you hit someone? You also specifically hit the face, do you know how shameful it is? Man is God, what is a woman? What is it? Lily hit him with chopsticks, and he started to block him, but he was thick-skinned, so the chopsticks hit him without leaving any trace, but it was Lily herself. His hands were tired, so he didn't feel any pain from the beating, but his expression was obviously a little embarrassed. He jumped up, and even the stool fell to the ground with him. He stared at Lily with vigilant eyes, obviously to prevent her from suddenly hitting anyone again. Lily reached out and touched the back of his head, and he even subconsciously raised his hand to cover his face. Seeing him like this, Lily suppressed the laughter in her heart and threw away the chopsticks in her hand. What is a woman? Wash the dishes. He wanted to open his mouth, but saw that Lily was willing to talk to him. A few days ago, she was so angry that she ignored him. Now she finally spoke to him. Zhang Hongyi grinned. He tentatively reached out to hold the bowl. Lily, without stopping, he picked up the dishes and chopsticks on the table and put them into the pot. When he looked back, Lily had already turned around and entered the room. He swallowed what he originally wanted to say, remembering that in the past few days, he thought that most official ladies had bad tempers. She is docile and introverted, easily unwilling to talk, and her behavior must be submissive. Unexpectedly, Lily is different. Although she says she doesn't like him and refuses to marry him, she cooks and boils water for him. Her temperament, he was not as timid and cautious as he imagined. Thinking of the scene when she had her hair ripped off by him and was a little angry and chased him with a knife, Zhang Hongyi felt embarrassed before, but now he couldn't help but curl up the corner of his mouth. Since they said they were going to meet guests, the clothes of the two of them were already too tattered to wear. Although Zhang Hongyi said that he was just meeting his brothers who grew up wearing a pair of pants and didn't need to pay so much attention, after dinner the two of them, after washing his feet and going to bed, Lily thought about it and turned out the needle and thread, asked him to light the oil lamp, cut 2 rags, and began to mend his clothes. Zhang Hongyi didn't have these things before, but there was an extra Lily in the house, so he was asked to buy these things. He huddled on the bed and saw Lily wearing a coat and still mending the seams under the lamp. I'm about to go to sleep. What are you doing sewing? I'm not a girl. I'm wearing a shabby coat. I don't believe that Deliozi and the others have to cut off contact with me. They are all members of my family. I don't care. Lily snorted. Under the light, her face looked more and more pleasing to the eye, and she looked a little fascinated. She lowered her head, and a few strands of fluid hung on her delicate forehead. She did not look at him, but it all fell on his clothes. Seeing that way, Zhang Hongyi's heart began to soften inexplicably. It was as if the memory of being beaten by her with chopsticks had been completely forgotten. He only remembered that she was squeezing him now. It looks like needlework. Zhang Hongyi felt an indescribable feeling in his heart, as if something was wrong, but he couldn't say it. He always wanted to do something, so he had to grip the mattress tightly and shout angrily, "Sleep! Don't turn on the light again. I know, I'll sleep with you and don't make any more noise." She finally raised her head and glared at Zhang Hongyi. After receiving this glare, Zhang Hongyi finally felt relieved. Thinking of the weird feeling just now, he turned around. He touched something in his arms. It was the comb he had bought for Lily before, but her hair had been torn off a lot by him and was tangled on it. She didn't want it when he gave it back to Lily that day. Somehow, he didn't pull the hair off, and kept it in his arms without giving it back to her. Now that he touched it, he didn't know what he was thinking. Zhang Hongyi endured the panic and reached out to pull a small handful of his own hair. With a strong tug, a large amount of hair was torn off by him along with a few strands of skin. He never went to court with Lily to get married, and the two of them never even had a drink. Just like Lily said, there was no matchmaker. But although he had not gone to court with Lily for the time being, the ancients said that he was deeply afraid of being married to Lily. After noticing what she was doing, she carefully wrapped the strand of hair she had pulled off around the comb. Her hair was slightly thinner, smoother, and shiny. The hair he pulled out was thicker and drier than hers. Their hair was tangled together, and it was obvious who belonged to whom. He also discovered this, and grabbed the hair and rubbed it. The strands of hair that were originally entangled one after another were messed up, and it was hard to tell them apart without looking carefully. When Zhang Hongyi was looking at the comb and smirking, Lily noticed something strange about him and glanced at him suspiciously. "What are you doing sneakily?" To be continued. If you like this work, You are welcome to come. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1005. Zhang Hong'ai was secretly sweet in his heart. When Lily drank, he was startled. His hand shook, and the comb he held in his hand fell to the mattress. He hurriedly reached out to touch it, and finally touched it. He held it firmly in his hand, like as if some little secret had been exposed. He was as panicked as a deer, even more panicked than being surrounded by people during a fight. His face turned red, and he became angry with embarrassment. He shouted in a rough voice. "What do I care about? Don't ask questions about men's affairs." Although his voice was loud, there was a guilty conscience in his tone. Zhang Hong'ai could hear it himself and was afraid that Lily would ask further about what happened just now. He didn't have the nerve to open his mouth. Okay, if you don't sleep, I will sleep." His burly body like a hill was curled up on the bed covered with a thin mattress. From Lily's point of view, his head was hairy, his hair is often unwashed and just held up like that. In the plot, Lily Jo remembers him as having such a sloppy image, but for some reason, now paired with his somewhat guilty and curled back, it seems a bit funny. Under the swaying dim light, Zhang Hong'ai struggled not to sleep at first, but because there was an extra lamp alone in the cold and humid room, the sight of Lily doing needlework made him feel peaceful for some reason, and he was alone. A grown man has always been fearless. Even if he thinks that death is just a waste of life, a man like him now actually feels that a woman who depends on him for survival gives him peace. He doesn't know when he fell asleep. When she woke up in the morning, Lily usually got up later than him. Today when she heard him getting up, she rubbed her eyes. He also sat up. "Sleep a little longer. What are you doing up so early?" The weather was cold and foggy in the morning. Zhang Hong'ai was in good health and very angry. He could sleep well at night with a thin quilt. But Lily was different. She was still shaking when she got up. Shivering, breathing into the palms of her hands and stamping her feet, Zhang Hong'ai let her fall asleep. She shook her head. "I'll get up and boil some water." Zhang Hong'ai heard this. Just thinking that she was going to boil water for him to wash his face, he couldn't help but grinned hee and reached out to scratch his head. "Why are you boiling water? Women are troublesome. You can sleep alone. I'll just get some cold water and wipe your face. Just your body. If you catch a cold, I will have to wait for you later." There was no light in the room, and there was only one outside the skylight. The dim moonlight that fell in shone on him. His tall figure was like an iron tower, blocking the light firmly. The coat Lily had sewn for him last night was now placed on the edge of the cabinet. He reached out to touch it cautiously, as if he was afraid that it would be damaged. His expression looked a little pious, and his eyes looked silly. "Come, smile." He reached out and touched the clothes, looking like he wanted to wear them but was reluctant to wear them. Finally, Lily glanced at him and yawned. "You can wear it and see. I added some fabric to the armpits and waist to make it bigger. In fact, it didn't take much effort to mend the clothes last night." The most troublesome thing was that Lily noticed that Zhang Hong'ai was tall. The clothes must have been a bit old. He looked a little small when he wore them. Sometimes he couldn't move his hands and feet very much. It has to be opened, and it is naturally easily damaged when pulled. The coat was too small. Firstly, it was not comfortable for him to wear. Secondly, even if she mended it, it would be easily damaged again. So Lily finally enlarged the coat for him, sewed some rags in the middle, and used the extra fabric to the waist was relaxed, and because it took time, I delayed going to bed until dawn. At this moment, Lily asked Zhang Hong'ai to try it. Zhang Hong'ai made an obedient sound and stretched out his hand to put the clothes on himself. As soon as he put them on, he could clearly feel the difference in the clothes. His armpits and chest, which were tight in the past, were obviously much looser. He tried to lift his arms, and the coat was no longer as tight as before. He was stunned for a moment, then reached out and touched his clothes. He lowered his head and was speechless for a moment. No one has ever noticed him like Lily. It's not that Zhang Hongii is not outstanding. Although he does not have a noble background, handsome appearance, or full of literary talents, he has a scary appearance. People have been afraid of him since childhood. There are many people. Generally, he is the one who is most often noticed in a crowd. He has been the leader among children since he was a child. It is easy for everyone to see him, but the first thing they see is his strength and fierceness. The neighbors think of him. When the brothers thought of him, the first thing they thought of was that his fists were hard and loud. When the brothers thought of him, they liked his straightforward temper and his loyalty. He always liked to entertain guests when drinking. Even when his parents were still alive, they thought he was strong enough to win the battle in the camp. Let this place live well. No one would notice that his clothes were too small like Lily. He was a big man and was not good at needlework. His clothes were too small and he was shy. He couldn't spare the money to buy new ones, so he had no choice but to make the coat looser. If the clothes are looser and don't need to be pulled so tightly, and a large part of the chest is exposed, over time, people will think that he is not serious, and everyone will have an even worse impression of him. People would only notice that his clothes were not neatly dressed and he was too terrible. No one noticed that his clothes actually didn't fit him. He almost forgot about it, but Lily noticed it, and she didn't say a word. Said, just sewed it together. Zhang Hongii was fumbling around with the light behind him. Lily squinted her eyes and was still awake, unable to see clearly the expression on his face. She was still awake and yawning. Recently, Xin Chen had no time to practice physical skills. Zhang Hongii was at home. He has a lot of time. It's not like in the plot that he has to go out and drink with his brothers until the afternoon every day, and he also has to go out for a few drinks in the evening. He even kills the pigs and sells the meat and returns early in the morning without staying outside. Therefore, when she came back, sometimes Lily didn't even finish a set of physical training skills, so there wasn't much progress. At most, it only served the purpose of strengthening her body. Therefore, she was still afraid of the cold. As soon as the quilt was lifted, the morning chill rushed straight to her body. She hugged her shoulders and got out of bed. Zhang Hongii saw her and said to her, "I told you not to get up, but you are disobedient. Is there any lady like you?" Lily ignored him and only told him to bring 2 bundles of firewood in. He was still a little reluctant to have his body sewn. Hearing her stubbornness, he had to stamp his feet and put down the clothes in his hands. He went out wearing only single clothes. After a while, he came in with a large bundle of firewood. Lily had already washed the pot and put a pot of water on it. "The stove is on. Why are you boiling so much water?" The tank was almost empty. Zhang Hongii took a look, then took the bucket and went out to pick up 2 more buckets. When he came back, the pot was already boiling, and the water he picked up just matched the heat. After getting a big bucket of water, Lily motioned him to take it out, and he obeyed. Before he knew what was going on, Lily brought out a stool, sat on it, and motioned him to squat down. He squatted obediently. This position was very close to Lily. He could see her 2 calves dangling on the stool at close range. The pair of small feet under the skirt seemed to be as long as his own palm, even if she was wearing a pair of worn-out shoes. Cloth shoes also look more and more delicate the more you look at them. At this moment, Zhang Hongii suddenly felt a little useless. She was originally from the Marquis Palace, so she should not be worthy of her. Her feet should not be wearing such a pair of shoes. If she were wearing the shoes of those big ladies in the city, she must be dressed as well as any of them. He started yelling in front of her, saying that he would not let her live worse than others, but in fact, after following him, she had not eaten much and was wearing no clothes. Even though she shouted that she would not marry him, she cooked and sewed clothes for him. Zhang Hongyi hesitated, but said in his mouth, "It's early in the morning. I'm not happy, and I'm making others uncomfortable. I'm going out to kill pigs. Little bitches are in trouble, and there are a lot of things to do." He mouthed. Zhong refused to admit defeat. In fact, Lily asked him to squat, and he was not reluctant at all. When he seemed to be impatiently reciting these words, there was even a smile in his eyes. Lily sat on the stool and reached out to touch the scarf on his head. He subconsciously wanted to hide, but Lily raised her hand and slapped him on the forehead. "Don't hide." Her action hit him. It was smooth, but Zhang Hongyi's face turned red. He only felt that the place where his forehead was touched by her seemed to be hit by the soft cotton. Because of the cold little hand became more and more tender, like the girl's palm. These days, her hands have become thicker when cooking and working, but compared to his, her skin is still tender. He was so distracted for a moment that he didn't realize that she was hitting him. Instead, his heart suddenly started beating faster. That kind of touch seemed to remain on his forehead as Lily's hand pulled away. He stretched out his hand to cover his head, as if to retain this feeling. After a while, he suddenly thought of something, and his face turned red. "You bitch, you know how shameless you are. What are you ashamed of? What are you ashamed of?" He squatted in front of him. At that height, Lily stretched out her hand to grab his ears, which made him scream out. But he didn't dare to hide. Lily pulled his hair smoothly, pulling off the square scarf on his head. The messy hair tied inside suddenly fell down. "Last time you tore off as much hair as I did. What's wrong with me scratching your hair? What are you hiding from? Are you afraid that I will eat you?" His hair was stiff and had not been washed for an unknown amount of time. Lily patted his head and motioned for him to lower his head. He seemed to have realized something. He stiffened his neck and refused to admit defeat, acting like a soldier who could not be killed or humiliated. He looked like, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going out to kill pigs." "How will I look like when I go out with my hair disheveled? I'm not a girl. I don't want to comb my hair. I'm not a man at all." Before Zhang Hongyi could finish his words, Lily he sneered twice, grabbed the water ladle in the bucket, scooped up a ladle of water, and poured it on his head with a splash. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1006. Zhang Hongyi was still opening his mouth to speak. He didn't expect that she would suddenly splash water, and he was splashed all over his face. He wiped his face, like a dog that fell into the water, shaking his head to hide, but that however, his hair was held in Lily's hand. He wanted to struggle, but he was afraid that she would be dragged off the stool and fall. During the struggle, Lily took water to wet his hair, and then rubbed it twice with soap locust. The water as it flowed down his face, he screamed loudly. The scream made Lily feel accomplished and happy. It wasn't until 2 buckets of water were washed that Zhang Hongyi's hair was washed clean. The sky in the east is white, and his disheveled hair is now attached to both sides of his face after washing. It looks like more than half of his hair is missing. His face, which is not small at all, is much bigger, and his clothes are all wet. He was about to cry while wiping the water stains on his body. "Look at the good things you did, your clothes are all wet." Zhang Hongyi wore the coat that Lily had mended for him last night. He couldn't bear to wear it, so he put it on with great care after picking it out. Unexpectedly, Lily dragged him to wash his hair. Before he could put it on to show off to his brothers, it was obvious that he couldn't put it on anymore. He twisted it twice and felt a little dumbfounded. His wet hair was hanging on his body. Although he still looked as fierce as usual, I wonder if it was because he was in such a mess right now. Although his voice was still loud, the momentum was much weaker. "Look at the good things you did, it's so lawless. Not only did you beat me, but you also pulled my ears and hair. What woman is as fierce and unreasonable as you? He kept mumbling, and touched it with some heartache. Touch your clothes. Not only was Lily not afraid, she couldn't help but want to laugh. It was indeed getting late, and Zhang Hong'ai did not dare to delay any longer for fear of losing his time. Seeing Lily leisurely packing away the buckets and stools, he said goodbye and finally moved her things into the house. I reluctantly changed into old clothes and went out. Before leaving, I still warned. Give me your clothes and put them on the stove. I'll wear them in the afternoon. He wanted to show off to his brothers that he had a wife. I have someone to help me mend my clothes. Seeing Lily nodded, she still didn't believe it, so she put her clothes on the stove and let the sparks that were not completely extinguished bake the wet clothes. Then he hurriedly took his own set of tools for killing pigs. He hurriedly locked the door and went out. This time he leaves. Lily was so tormented that she no longer felt sleepy. When his coat was roasting on the stove, it gave off a sour smell of sweat, smoked by the fireworks. The smell became much more obvious. I don't know how long it had been since the clothes had been washed. Lily ignored Zhang Hong'ai's instructions when he left and just took the hot water she had just washed her face with and threw the jacket into soak. She was going to soak it for a while before washing it and drying it before returning. Wu began to practice physical training. It's just that Zhang Hong'ai came back very quickly today. When he came back, he didn't come back alone. When he heard the sounds of footsteps, Lily slowly stopped his movements, and the sound of Zhang Hong'ai unlocking the door rang out. A strange man's voice sounded. Brother, I heard that you brought back a bride a few days ago, and it seemed like she was hiding something. My brothers said they wanted to come over for a wedding drink several times, but you refused. Why are you rarely free today? You want to invite your brothers. Coming. The voice was very loud, and another person then spoke. It is said that she is a female prisoner's wife in the post house. I have inquired clearly. If I can support him, my eldest brother will be considered to have slept with a top-notch good woman. I will be blessed in this life. Enough enjoyment. I'm afraid even our Yingzhou magistrate might not be able to touch such a girl before. Oops. Before he could finish his words, the sound of unlocking the door suddenly stopped, and the man who spoke looked like someone was beating her. Lily couldn't hear clearly in the room. She only heard the man outside shouting in panic. Why are you hitting people, brother? I told you that you can't spit out ivory from that smelly mouth. If you act more honestly in front of my mother-in-law, do you think the magistrate is a fool? If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will shake all your teeth. Zhang Hong'ai was a little angry, and his voice was much more ferocious than usual. There was a bit of sinisterness in his tone at this moment. The other people seemed to be holding him back, and repeatedly advised him, ouch, brother, Lu Lao-san poured it into his mouth. It smells like shit. He just said it casually. We are all brothers and grew up together. How can you not know his temper? Why bother with him? Brother. The man known as Lu Lao-san called out tremblingly, and Zhang Hong'ai snorted, still a little angry, I'm warning you, Lu Lao-san, if you let me hear you again next time. Similarly, if you have no control over your words with your sister-in-law, I will tear away your life. Brothers will never have to do anything in this life. Okay, big brother, when I said brothers, we will be brothers for life. Didn't everyone say that we don't want to be born in the same year, the same month and the same day, but we want to die in the same year, the same month, the same day? It's just a woman. The third brother is wrong. Big brother, just give me a lesson. If you are not a brother, you must not say it again. It will hurt the relationship between brothers. A gentle male voice said. He obviously had different weight from the previous ones, because he said after saying this, Zhang Hong'ai sneered twice, and then the sound of unlocking the door rang again. You don't need to say anything anymore, second brother. I invited you to drink here to meet my sister-in-law, not for you to use words to spoil her. If she looks down on her, she means looking down on me, and if I look down on me as a sworn brother, get out of here as soon as possible. My small temple cannot tolerate big Buddhas like you. They are just angry words. Brother, please calm down. People outside were coaxing and persuading, but Lily was sitting in the room, a little stunned. Joe Behe has also seen this group of brothers in the plot, but none of these people seem to be easy to get along with. Zhang Hongii has made friends with people from all walks of life. As long as he has eyes for any kind of people, he can get along with them. After drinking, Lily spent some time with him and figured out some of his character. It was not unusual for people like him to have many friends. In the plot, Lily Joe doesn't like Zhang Hongii and other sworn brothers. Most of the people who associate with Zhang Hongii are not kind. Every time Lily Joe sees her, she tries to hide away. At first, Zhang Hongii even brings people back. As time goes by, it turns out that she even wanted to dodge herself, as if she was frightened every time she talked to him, let alone meeting his brothers. He seemed carefree, but in fact he was not that stupid, so naturally he no longer brought brother comes back. However, Joe Behe knew that he had several sworn brothers. He was sworn brothers with a total of 7 people. He was the oldest and had the strongest fists among them, so he was called the boss. There were 8 brothers. Excellent, Zhang Hongii usually goes out to drink with them. Among these people, only De Liozi is the most serious one, a policeman. The rest are just gangsters in the market, playing tricks all day long. Dog. As soon as the door lock was unlocked, several people came into the courtyard. The door to the hall outside was opened. Zhang Hongii was still angry and no one dared to clamor to call his sister-in-law out to greet him. He snorted and stared at the stove. He originally wanted to show off his coat, but unexpectedly, it was all in vain. The coat he had hung on the stove when he went out in the morning was gone. This time, Zhang Hongii couldn't bear to get angry and hurriedly in a hurry, he shouted. Daughter-in-law, where is my coat? As soon as he finished speaking, Lily came out of the house. Several people heard the footsteps and turned to look. They saw a petite girl turning out from behind the broken wall and pointing to the barrel in the corner of the room. It's blistered. When Zhang Hongii heard this, his eyes turned red with anxiety. I told you in the morning that it will be done by drying it. Why did you soak it in water? He spoke loudly in anxiety, and everyone sounded like it was as if he was already losing his temper and yelling. He was still angry just now. Everyone was afraid that he would beat the delicate little lady half to death in his anger. They were about to open their mouths to persuade him, but they didn't see Lily glance at Zhang Hongii. The man who was so fierce just now, when she saw him, his voice subconsciously became smaller. I said you can wear it after drying it, why did you just soak it in water? The beaten Lu Lao-san covered his chest. He had been punched on the cheek by Zhang Hongii before, and his fist hit his ear. At this time, he was buzzing when he heard people talking, and his chest was kicked by him. A kick. It hurt to breathe now. The man who was so fierce just now was like a docile dog in front of the little girl. He didn't even dare to speak louder. He dared to be angry in his heart but didn't dare to speak. He just coughed. Don't dare to speak out twice. Soak it in water. It will be easy to wash in the afternoon, Lily said softly. He felt a little distressed, but seeing that his clothes were all soaked, there was nothing he could do at this time. Several people came back early, and they haven't started cooking yet. The house is narrow, and a few brothers went out and sat in the yard. The wine had been brewed long ago. He came back with a leg left of the meat he sold today. She also bought some broad beans, and Lily lit a fire to cook. Zhang Hongii sat among the brothers, listening to the sound of the fire coming from time to time in the room, and the sound of chopping vegetables from time to time, but his heart felt like a cat scratching. In the past, he liked to drink and eat meat with a group of brothers, but now for some reason, he found that these brothers usually didn't come to disturb him. He and Lily were having a good time. He didn't hear her voice for a long time. Zhang Hong'ai couldn't sit still. The pot in the room was very heavy, and he didn't know if she could move it carefully. The knife was big, and there were bones with meat that she brought back today. Her fingers were thin and tender. If you accidentally cut it, you will probably cry. He was thinking wildly in his mind, wondering if he was pretending to be someone else. He was always worried that she would get hurt. He couldn't sit still. He was about to find an excuse to run away when he suddenly heard Lily in the room. Zhang Hong'ai. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1007. Coming, Zhang Hong'ai jumped up as soon as Lily called. Regardless of the brothers still talking to him, he kicked the stool, patted his butt and ran into the house. That little bitch can't do anything, you need me to do anything. He looked very happy, but pretended to be annoyed, and cursed a few words. Brothers, let's talk first, drink wine. Brother, I'll go teach her a lesson, no matter how big or small she is, no matter how decent she is. My husband won't call me, just call me by my name. How can I teach her the rules so that she doesn't dare to be disrespectful anymore? Several people saw him sneaking away involuntarily, looking like a rabbit, and they all shook their heads. Daughter-in-law, you can't call me by my name anymore. If you want to call me husband, forget it at ordinary times. You have to give me some face in front of my brother, right? He entered the room, and Lily held her hand as expected. He was holding a knife in his hand and preparing to chop the bones. He took it easily. This is what he usually does. He chopped the bones with quick hands and feet. He threw them all into the pot according to Lily's instructions, and said sincerely, also with the name I call you a man, where do you want me to put my face? When Lily heard this, she shook the firewood stick in her hand. Zhang Hong'ai's eyelids twitched when he saw her action, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. Lily has become fierce these days, and she beats him at every turn. He is thick-skinned and fleshy. It was so thick that she was not afraid of pain, but if she was chased out of the house in front of the brothers, she would really lose face. He shut his mouth and did not dare to speak anymore. After a while, he asked with a straight face, "Call me what to do." "Didn't you do it all?" Lily called him in and asked him to chop the bones. Zhang Hong'ai grinned when he saw her talking, but for a moment he didn't want to leave the room. Zhang Hong'ai, he walked around trying to help, talking to Lily at one point or another. However, the brothers outside couldn't wait any longer and called him while holding their throats and pretending to be Lily's voice just now. Lily was not embarrassed this time. As he looked, Zhang Hong'ai's face turned red all of a sudden. He didn't dare to find trouble with Lily. After all, his daughter-in-law felt distressed when he encountered her. But he is not so good-natured towards his brothers. He cursed and clenched his fists and went out. After a while, screams of ouch came from outside. At noon, I cooked a large pot of braised pork ribs. The remaining pork bones were cooked with melon soup, and the broad beans were fried dry in oil. Sprinkle some salt on it to go with the wine. During this period, men and women ate at different tables. As soon as Lily finished setting out the food, she carried the bucket to the corner of the yard, ready to rub his clothes. None of the men looked at her. Instead, they were all drinking. One of them, a thin young man wearing a green long coat with gray patches, suddenly spoke. "Brother, have you really decided to be that executioner? If you get involved in this, you will be a lowly person for the rest of your life, and I'm afraid you won't be able to get away from it." This young man is the second eldest among several sworn brothers. His real surname is Yet. As for his name, Lily has no idea. After all, Lily Zhou originally feared Zhang Hongii like a tiger, and was not only unwilling and resistant to contact with him, but also felt unwilling to contact him. He also tried his best to avoid his group of friends. He was afraid in his heart, but he didn't dare to say it with his mouth. As soon as Ye Laoer finished speaking, Zhang Hongii said nothing. The Big Six hesitated for a while, and when he was about to speak, Zhang Hongii held a bowl of wine. Think so much. Now we are not lowly, but in the eyes of the officials and their wives, we are much better. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. A few of them were not well known in the market, and they were mixed with various religions, but he is a low-life person, a gangster, and a green-skinned gangster. How can he be famous or not? Brothers, there are certain things I can only say once. Even if you ask me again later, I will never say it. Now that I have a family, I don't even have any money left in my hands. I can't even buy a new dress for my wife. I don't have enough money to buy clothes. If I don't find a job, it will be difficult to live in the future. How can I talk about whether I am a humble person or not? When he said this, he paused and laughed. My wish is not that big as long as I can afford to support my daughter-in-law so that she can eat well every meal and not have to eat porridge with me every day and have a sallow face. I just need to buy her flowers and wear them if I can afford clothes so that she won't lose anything by marrying me once. That's it. If I can save some money and buy a girl to wait on me, so that she doesn't get rough on my hands by doing laundry and cooking, that would be even better. As for those with bad reputations, that stuff can't be used as food, I don't care. Zhang Hongii didn't want to be a glorious hero, nor did he want to be famous throughout the ages. He didn't have that many wishes. In fact, he only wanted to have a wife and children who could live on the Kong, and be a gentleman in the city. I'm not envious. Someone who wears silk and satin can get by even if he wears a bad coat. There are thousands of ways to live. The only regret is that I have to please a spoiled little daughter-in-law. It's a pity that I don't have the ability. Just let her be the way she was before. He knew that Ye Laoer was arrogant and was unwilling to be trapped in Yingzhou City all his life. He also always wanted to be the master and tried to persuade him to do something big. Unfortunately, several of them had limited backgrounds. Apart from his amazing brute strength, I don't know a lot of Chinese characters. After Zhang Hongii finished speaking, the wine bowl was handed to his mouth. It's strange to say that the wine that usually tastes fragrant was handed to his mouth at this time, but he couldn't open his mouth to swallow it no matter what went down. He turned his head and looked towards the corner of the yard. Lily was still sitting there. There were several large pots of fragrant meat on the table. She was not bad at her craftsmanship. The sight of the color and smell made people drool. Several brothers were here. While eating and drinking, she had been busy in the kitchen for a long time. Now she was hungry and had to help herself wash her clothes. The cotton wool was originally large, but it was obviously a little heavy after being stained with water. Lily rubbed it with some difficulty, her plain face turned pale, and calluses began to form on her tender palms. When she used her hands to hit herself, he felt it when it hit his palm. My heart felt heavy for some reason, and I couldn't drink the wine anymore. Zhang Hongii put down the bowl he picked up again. He kept staring at Lily from the corner of his eye. Seeing her lowering her head, he didn't know if he noticed it. There was movement here, and occasionally her hair hung down. She stretched out her wet hands to hook them behind her ears. That half of her face was not as big as his palm. He felt itchy in his heart. The more he looked at it, the happier he became, and the more he looked at it, the more he looked at her. Gentle. He didn't notice it himself, and thought that his actions were very secretive, but unexpectedly, the sight of him staring at Lily fell into the eyes of several sworn brothers. They were both surprised and a little surprised by this brother's infatuation, and sighed. He shook his head. Zhang Hongai's words just now made the brothers feel uncomfortable. Someone raised his wine bowl. Oh, elder brother is right. Only when you have a family can you build a career. Now that you haven't established a family, what's the point of talking about a career? Although a good man has ambitions in all directions, he has no heirs at home, so everything is just empty talk. The big man in the police uniform shook his head and sighed, "Oh, time has not waited for me, time has not waited for me." That's not necessarily true. Yellower looked a little sad at first, and then seemed to remember something. "I heard." "Okay, eat, drink, brother, why are you talking about so many useless things?" Someone interrupted Yellower. He frowned, sighed, and raised the bowl as he was told. "Come on." Zhang Hongai also raised the bowl and saw someone reaching out to grab the meat. Somehow, he suddenly remembered that Lily had been busy for a long time and had just made a fuss in the kitchen just to serve the brothers. Now she was hiding aside to serve. While he was washing clothes, he was eating, drinking, and having fun with a few brothers here. Although women were not allowed to serve at the table, which was a rule from ancient times, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He saw one of the brothers holding up chopsticks to hold the food. He moved faster than his brain, used his hand as a knife, stretched it out and hit the big man on the wrist with a snap. "Ouch!" the big man screamed. The blow he received was worse than being hit with a mallet. He could hardly hold the chopsticks steadily. His hand shook, and the chopsticks were connected with the chopsticks. A piece of meat was spilled into the pottery basin. He retracted the sore hand into his arms, gasping in pain, holding his wrist and shouting, "Brother, eldest brother, my brother, what are you doing?" "Hey!" Zhang Hongai hit someone before he realized what good thing he had done. He quickly got up and apologized to him. "Brother is reckless, but your sister-in-law has been busy for a long time and hasn't eaten yet. You kid doesn't know the rules and you kidnap her first. It's up, you wait, I'll get some bowls and put the food aside for her to eat later." He was as tall as an iron tower. When he stood there, a few people dared to have other opinions under his threat. They all looked like they dared to be angry but dared not speak. They pursed their lips and did not dare to speak out. Zhang Hongai entered the room, looked around, washed the two largest bowls, and came out to use chopsticks to eat half of the dishes. The brothers watched his movements in silence. He frowned and thought for a while. "Your sister-in-law is young. Now is the time to grow taller. Eat more so that you can give birth to a fat boy for me later. You are growing strong and strong, so it doesn't matter if you eat less." His words made several people choke. I was speechless for a long time. The vegetables in the basin were almost exhausted. Delioza swallowed his saliva. "Brother, it's almost gone," he reminded. Before anyone could use their chopsticks, Zhang Hongai had already driven away half of the food. How could a woman, whose waist was not as thick as Zhang Hongai's thighs, eat so much? There were 8 brothers outside, and they only shared half of the dishes. She had to eat half of them alone. As soon as he said this, Zhang Hongai thought for a while and poured some more food back. There was only a small bowl of 2 dishes left, one with a bigger fist, less, but it was enough for a woman to eat. The remaining dishes, the basin was still full, and the brothers breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that was enough. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1008. After all, the eldest brother still doesn't value sex over friends. Although he is a little confused, after being reminded by the brothers, he still understands the righteousness. Songba rubbed his chin, smiled and was about to speak, but saw Zhang Hongai put the dishes in the middle of the table instead of taking the bowl away. Instead, he picked up the dish basin, as if it was a matter of course. "Okay, you can eat these. Anyway, Everyone is here just to drink. It's almost enough to eat some broad beans to go with it. You won't gain weight after eating this dish, and it will be wasted if you chew it. After he finished speaking, several people did not wait. In response, he picked it up and walked away. The brothers behind him were so angry that they fell down and cursed Zhang Hongyi for being so thick-skinned. He was really thick-skinned, and he didn't act like a normal person when he was scolded like this. He smiled and put the dishes in and put them away. He refused to bring them out again. Even if he was scolded, he acted as if he didn't hear it. There was nothing a few people could do to treat him like this. When Lily heard the noise, she turned her head. Zhang Hongyi laughed so hard that he couldn't see his teeth. He pointed at the room, as if he was a cat that had stolen something. Lily glared at him, and he laughed twice before picking up the food. Got the punch bowl? Okay, don't talk so much, just drink and drink, eat and drink. What other dishes are there in front of you? There were 2 sea bowls and a large plate of crispy brown broad beans, and there were only wine bowls in the hands of a few people. His words made people speechless, and the brothers were silent. Without saying a word, Zhang Hongyi felt relieved this time. He picked up the wine bowl and took a big sip. Before he could swallow it, from the corner of his eye not far away, he saw the lily he had been paying attention to because he couldn't rub it anymore. The clothes seemed to be a little angry and he threw his clothes back into the tub. He took the laundry and beat it, but after just 2 beats, his hands seemed to soften. He sat there to catch his breath. The look made Zhang Hongyi want to laugh. He held a sip of wine in his mouth and couldn't swallow it but couldn't spit it out. Brother, after thinking about it, there is another way out. Among the brothers, Ye'er has not completely given up. Even if Zhang Hongyi just said something sincerely. But Ye'er was very unwilling. Would you rather be a king, general, or minister? Brother, heroes don't ask about their origins. I have inquired about it. In Yingzhou City, Deng Daguan, the prefect of Dengzhou, is recruiting soldiers now. We are at the right time. When I was young and strong, my eldest brother had the courage to be defeated by 10,000 men, and he was not as good as us brothers. Together we joined Deng's his who, firstly to kill the enemy and establish the country, and secondly, to forge a path to wealth and wealth even in the bloody road. Ye'er was so excited that he told his plan. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi saw Lily lifting 2 cotton-padded jackets. It was true that she couldn't lift them anymore, as if she was a little angry. She stood up. Zhang Hongyi he just thought that she didn't want to wash anymore, and was about to find a way to go over and tell her to put it aside for the time being, and then go and help her wash it after the brothers left. Unexpectedly, Lily suddenly threw away the laundry stick and jumped in. In the wooden basin, he was stepping and jumping on his newly mended coat. She had just mended this coat for herself. Before she could put it on, Lily stepped on it. Zhang Hongyi didn't expect that she would do this. How could she control the wine in her mouth? And all the words were sprayed out with a p sound. Ye'er happened to get excited when he talked about it. He stood up and brought the wine to persuade him to join the army. Unexpectedly, before he finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi's wine sprayed all over his face. A few drops of wine foam sprayed into Ye'er's eyes, like a knife cutting flesh, and it was so painful that he almost shed tears of heroism. He was dumbfounded. Holding the wine, he could neither sit nor stand nor laugh. I couldn't speak, and I was all dumbfounded. This situation was so sudden that the brothers were dumbfounded. When Zhang Hongyi asked them to raise their glasses and drink together, everyone had picked up their bowls. They did not expect such an accident to happen at this moment. Some people couldn't help laughing. Ye'er's face was as black as ink, and he was about to speak, but Zhang Hongyi put down the wine in the bowl with a thump. His face turned livid. This is outrageous, his voice was like thunder, and there were waves of coldness and sharp murderous aura in his body. The brothers saw that he seemed to be really angry, and they were so angry that they didn't even dare to take a breath. Yet who had just been sprayed with wine, did not dare to say anything. He put the wine bowl aside, wiped his face and sat down again. "You bitch, why are you stepping on my clothes? You really haven't been beaten for 3 days, so you can go to the house and uncover the tiles." He clenched his fists, and everyone thought that he just looked like he was protecting his wife, and he was the fourth among the brothers. He only teased Lily a few words and then received a good beating from him. He had some food just now and would rather give most of the food to the little lady instead of bringing it out to the brothers to share. Everyone felt that Zhang Hongyi had the heart of that lustful friend, and it was not without sadness in his heart. After all, when this eldest brother was not married in the past, he always thought of them first in everything. If he had money, he would spend it on them first. Now that he had meat and wine, how could he not call his brothers to eat and drink? Now that I have a woman, it seems that my appearance has changed. Everyone is a little bit disgusted. At this moment, when they heard Zhang Hongyi's loud voice and looked like he was about to hit Lily, they were also a little unsure whether what he said was true. But when they saw Lily taking Zhang Hongyi's clothes and trampling on them, the brothers still hoped that Zhang Hongyi would teach Lily a lesson, so they all yelled at the side, "Brother, women must be disciplined. Good women come out from under your fists. If you don't fight or obey, you are against the will of heaven." Yes, a womanly family. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi clenched his fist and rushed to Lily. He was still very aggressive just now. As soon as he ran to Lily, Lily sneered and glared at him. "What are you talking about? If you don't fight for 3 days, you will go to the house to uncover the tiles." Lily heard Zhang Hongyi's words and the booing from several brothers, so she opened her mouth to ask him. When she talked about it later, her voice gradually rose, and her tone, although it was gentle, the high-pitched sound was a little higher. Zhang Hongyi sensed something was wrong and instinctively raised his hands to hold his head. "Who are you going to beat? Who are you going to teach a lesson? Who are you going to discipline?" Seeing Zhang Hongyi like this, Lily first held back her laughter, and then asked again. She didn't hit herself in front of several brothers, making herself unable to get off the stage in public. Zhang Hongyi was relieved at first, and then he put his hand down and said loudly, "You little lady, why are you stepping on my clothes? My clothes, I just sewed it up, aren't I afraid that you might step on it? What's more, what's wrong with you? I'm the head of the family, do you understand the family rules?" When Zhang Hongyi said this, he was still a little unsure. Looking at Lily's expression, there was no hint of happiness or anger. He was agitated and uneasy. He was a little afraid that Lily would be angry and wanted to admit defeat in front of her, but he couldn't. He really couldn't wipe off his face after being pinched by a woman in front of his brothers. He puffed out his chest and said, okay, go into the house to eat by yourself, and don't wash clothes here. You can't do anything. On the contrary, they trampled my fine clothes into a mess." He waved his hand, and Lily glanced at him, washed her hands in a bucket nearby, shook off the water drops on her hands, and said, "Come in here." Seeing her like this, Zhang Hongyi felt a little nervous in his heart. He subconsciously wanted to pull Lily away, but when he saw her hiding sideways, he suddenly became anxious. He didn't care about waiting outside to watch the excitement, and wanted him to teach Lily a lesson. When they saw Lily entering the house and heard her asking them to follow her, they dared to stop there. They spat out the wine in their mouths and quickly followed her. She didn't walk fast. After all, people have short calves, but he was tall. He took 2 or 3 steps forward to reach Lily, but he didn't dare to stop her, and only dared to follow behind. Seeing his useless look, the brothers couldn't help but shake their heads and sigh, "Brother is ruined. Women mislead people." Zhang Hongyi heard clearly, but ignored them. He just entered the house. When he saw Lily walking straight into the house, he hurriedly followed him in. When no one was seen anymore, the fierce look on his face suddenly changed. "Oh, my aunt and ancestor, I got so angry after just saying a few words to you. Didn't I just want you to come in and have dinner? Why are you angry with me? Aren't you saying that I trampled on your clothes?" Lily suppressed her laughter and sat down on her bed. He squatted in front of him like a big dog. When he heard that Lily was still willing to talk to him, he nodded with a smile. "No, don't tell me, if you step on it, I'm just afraid of hitting the soles of your feet. You smiling face, please be more serious." Lily kicked him, and he hurriedly straightened his back. Lily then pretended to wipe her tears. "Zhang Hong, I told you, if you dare to hit me, if you dare to touch a hair on my head, I'm not done with you." Seeing her cry, Zhang Hong's face, which had been smiling just now, suddenly became a little anxious. He shook his head repeatedly. "If you don't want to fight, I won't fight. I'm not stupid. If I want to fight, I will hit other people's wives. How can I hit you? Oh, my ancestors, don't I want to save face? How can you let me get down in front of my brothers?" Hearing his rogue words, Lily's eyelids jumped and she stretched out her hand to slap him. He deliberately pretended to scream ouch, ouch, but in fact he was thick-skinned and thick-bodied, so these few slaps didn't hurt him at all. "You want to save face, I don't want it? What do you think of me as beating and scolding me in front of your brothers, and they ask you to discipline me? How are you going to discipline me?" Zhang Hong laughed twice. "I guess I was wrong." He nodded his head and promised, "Next time I won't yell at you in front of the brothers. These guys can't speak. I'll tell you later. Let them kneel down one by one and apologize to you, my sister-in-law." Lily felt a little complicated when she heard what he said. Such a man is not a man with excellent character, nor is he the Yeshizi who has a stunning appearance and family background in the plot. He is not a good person, and he even has the slickness of a small person in the market. But in a certain aspect, he is not no worse than the cold prince yet. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1009. Zhang Hong has his own good points and his own advantages. He admits when he is wrong. These days of getting along with each other can also prove that no matter how hot-tempered he is not bad at treating his own people. If you were to be an ordinary person with him, husband and wife may not be any worse than marrying into the marquis. Although he has no money, he is willing to find ways to make money for his wife to spend. He will admit his mistakes. She will take care of them these days. The big man, who looked like a man who could be killed and never humiliated, was beaten in front of her and he ran around in his arms, not daring to fight back. Such a man may not be comparable to Yeshizi in terms of background, appearance, conversation, and cultivation, but in terms of life, he is much better than Yeshizi. It is a pity that the original protagonist in the plot did not realize this. After spending several years with him, what he left behind it was all due to fear of him. They had been married for many years, and they were indeed in the same bed, and their understanding of him was only based on his appearance. Thinking of this, Lily looked at Zhang Hong's big bronze face, with a soft look in her eyes. She sighed in her heart and brushed her hair. "There's no need to apologize, but you have to wash that cotton-padded jacket." When he heard what Lily said, he breathed a sigh of relief. At first Lily looked gloomy and cried again. He thought Lily was really angry. But now he saw that she reached out to hit him again, and he knew that she probably wasn't. To be honest, this newly bought daughter-in-law is not afraid of him. To be honest, Zhang Hong is actually filled with emotion. His appearance is not very good looking, and serious women will hide after seeing him. He originally thought that Lily would be rewarded like this. The official Lady of Sin should be very unhappy with him. If she didn't like him, Zhang Hongii wouldn't be willing to force her. But what surprised him was that Lily was not afraid of him. Not only was she not afraid, but she actually cared about him. At first, he didn't take the young lady he bought home for 5 cents into his heart. When she said she didn't want to marry him, Zhang Hongii was not willing to force him. Why should a man worry about not having a wife? What's more, if he can't marry him, he won't be able to marry him. Although he is not a good person, it would be fine if Lily doesn't say anything. It's his turn to spend money to buy a woman back home. Of course it was his turn to enjoy it, but even though they had clearly stated that they didn't like him, he didn't want to force the unsweet melon, as before. Lily ignored him like this. He didn't take it seriously at all. But it was different now, and he couldn't tell what was different, but he thought if she didn't want to pay attention to him. I felt a little nervous. Although Zhang Hongii roared fiercely on weekdays, he was just a paper tiger, vulnerable to a blow. Although face was important, it was nothing compared to Li Ziyi. Seeing Lily reaching out to hit herself, the force was as light as a mosquito, and it was neither painful nor itchy when slapped on the face. Zhang Hongii did not block it and let her hit him happily, then he muttered. I was the one doing the washing, but you ruined my clothes and stepped on them with your feet. What would it look like? He still had some lingering thoughts about his coat being stepped on. Next time, stay away from my coat. This time I'll step on it if it got wet, be sure not to touch it again next time. It was finally sewn up, but if it gets damaged again, who will be responsible? This was the first piece of clothing that someone was willing to take the trouble to modify for him. It meant more to him than just a coat. He kept a straight face and kept mumbling, saying that Lily didn't know how to wash clothes. Telling her not to touch the quilt or clothes in the future, just sitting there, and saying that she couldn't do anything and was of no use at all, and that she didn't know how to treat her husband as her first priority. After reading it for a long time, Lily wanted to laugh. He hit him twice more. It didn't hurt, but he screamed as if he had been tortured. When he saw Lily smiling, he suddenly realized something. He pointed at her and shouted, "You are pretending to cry." Lily didn't feel embarrassed after being pointed out by him. Instead, she narrowed her eyes and said, "If you don't pretend to cry, do you really want to see me cry? What's more, in front of your brothers, if I cry without you having to teach me, wouldn't you be more, you have face?" He shook his head, and after thinking about it for a while he became a little excited. The little woman is really cunning. But since you know that you are wrong, then I, a manly man, will not care about you as a woman. I left some food for you. You just hide in the room and eat later. You deserve those boys for disrespecting you. If you had known, you wouldn't have kept those dishes with them. He patted his thigh, feeling a little annoyed. I'll quit drinking in the future. The price of a meal will be why don't I buy you a pair of embroidered shoes, they will definitely look better than others. Zhang Hongii remembered that when she was washing his hair in the morning, he squatted in front of her and accidentally saw her little feet dangling, and his heart moved. At this moment, he was really some regrets. If I don't eat the meat today, if I save some for eating, and I don't exchange the remaining money from selling the meat for wine, how can I buy her a pair of shoes? I don't know how to save, so I invited my brother back to spend the money, which made me feel a little uncomfortable. She had just jumped into the wash basin to step on Lily's shoes, and the soles of her feet were wet. The dusty shoes were soaked with water, but she didn't have a replacement pair. Zhang Hongii felt uncomfortable, and he lowered his head and stopped talking for a while. Lily patted his head. His hair was tied up casually. He had washed it in the morning and it looked much smoother than before. His hair quality was not very good, and it was thick and prickly in the palm of his hand. Zhang Hongii comes from a rough background and has a low status, but he may not be a little lower spirited than others. But now he said that he wanted his wife to live a good life, but now he sees her suffering with him, and the smile at the corner of his mouth gradually becomes a little lower. When Lily patted him, he was like a docile big cat, rubbing his head in the palm of her hand, and did not stay down for too long. He went out and brought the vegetable basin in. Lily's mouth twitched when she saw the two dishes that were almost untouched. She was washing clothes just now and didn't notice the movement on the other side of the table. She only heard a few people seem to be arguing vaguely, but she didn't pay much attention. Now it seemed that Zhang Hongyi had brought all the dishes, and she felt a little complicated. Zhang Hongyi put the bowl and chopsticks into her hands. He was very shameless and had spoken forcefully before, but the brothers couldn't really throw people away in the yard, so he coaxed Lily into eating, and then went out in a panic. Several brothers thought of how hopeless he was just now, and all tried to tease him, but he just smiled and showed no signs of anger. There were still some dishes on the table, but the dishes he brought out were not many. Each of the brothers would probably have a chopstick. After only a few times, these people had barely touched the bowls of food out of shame. They only ate some broad beans with wine. Zhang Hongyi took the chopsticks and grabbed the meat. Such a shameless move made everyone laugh. He twitched the corner of his mouth and his eyelids twitched. "Brother, I haven't seen you for a few days. You are as afraid of your wife as you are of a tiger. How heroic were you in the past? Even when I meet foreigners, I have never seen you so cowardly." While the few people were talking, Zhang Hongyi held up his chopsticks. The half bowl of food was gone very quickly. Seeing how rude he was, everyone laughed and cursed. Zhang Hongyi was also rude. While they were scolding him, he took the bowl and ate it, and stopped drinking the wine. Even if the alcohol worm in your stomach is really uncomfortable, now that you have decided to get married, you should calm down and live a good life. No matter how greedy you are, you can't just live by your own temper like before. Brother, think carefully about what I say. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yair wiped his face, his hair was still dripping. The wine Zhang Hongyi had just sprayed into his eyes, burning his eyes like daggers. He couldn't bear the pain and washed his face with water. At this time, his eye circles were still a little red. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Hongyi raised his head in confusion, his mouth was shiny with food, and asked, "Second brother, what are you talking about? What are you thinking about? I have already said that I will just ask Delioza for help. Don't try to persuade me again." He still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart at this time. Mr. Yair told him that there was no executioner. The prospect was just a lowly one, which undoubtedly made Zhang Hongyi a little impatient, and his thick eyebrows wrinkled. Finally, the topic was brought to an end. Unexpectedly, Yair brought it up again. The brothers all held their chopsticks in silence. Lu Lao-san hesitated for a while and sighed. "Second brother makes sense. Big brother, you should really think about it." "What are you thinking about?" Zhang Hongyi said impatiently, clapped his chopsticks on the table with a bang, and his eyes turned cold. "I really can't even eat in peace. It doesn't matter if you are cheap or not, I don't ask for it. For the rest, I just want to have a good life in this life. How easy is it to be rich and powerful? Going to the battlefield to kill the enemy and living in two places with your wife, what's the good thing? Delioza, you still have my mother at home, you just going to make trouble? That rice soaked in blood is not delicious. If you win, how much money can you get? How many delicious meals can you buy for your wife? If you die, others can sleep with my wife. Am I cheap? Do I look like such a fool? You are brothers, stop talking about it, otherwise don't blame me for not showing any brotherly kindness and driving you out." He turned his face, and the faces of the brothers changed. Yair's face was green and white. He was so stunned that he choked and couldn't speak for a long time. After a while, he snorted angrily, "You are so cruel. Well, for the sake of a woman, I gave up more than 10 years of brotherhood. Zhang Hong I think I'm going to miss you. You can't fight for such a good opportunity. Qingyun Road is just ahead of you. Deng's his who is quite famous. Don't miss it in the future. This opportunity, you will struggle in the mud for the rest of your life. After Ye finished speaking, he saw Zhang Hong clenching his fists, fearing that he was going to hit him, so he even stopped drinking and put the bowl down. What's more, your wife doesn't care how many times you can guard her. Even if you can be an executioner for a while, you can still do it for the rest of your life. You are short-sighted and only know how to treat a little girl like a baby. It seems like I don't care if you become a lowly person, but you have to ask your wife, who was born in a wealthy family, if she is happy with it. After saying this, Ye rolled his sleeves. I don't want to leave you here, I will leave you alone, master, let's go. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1010. One day, you will know that what I said is right. Ye turned around and left. After leaving these words, the brothers looked at each other, a little embarrassed to stay. Zhang Hong clenched his fists, his expression was a bit scary. Although he was usually scary, but at this time his face was so gloomy that he seemed to be able to like dripping water. Ye left, but the words he said when he left were like a thorn in his heart. After a few words of persuasion, the brothers succeeded in persuading one side, and then hurried out to persuade Ye's side. Until these brothers were sent away, there was no smile on Zhang Hong's face. Everyone broke up after the meal. When Lily heard the noise and came out, those people had already left. Zhang Hong put away the bowls and chopsticks in silence. Lily asked him what happened, but he just shook his head and said nothing. Lily pressed the question urgently, and he gritted his teeth and refused to speak. Why don't you drink any more? His expression was a little unattractive. He was obviously happy when he went out in the morning. He also said that he had started a family and started a business, and he wanted to find a serious job and no longer be a fool like before. After a while, his expression changed. The wine jar on the table was knocked open, and there was more than half of the jar of wine left in it. Several bowls were not finished yet. Lily wanted to put it away, but he put it away first, looking a little gloomy. Is the executioner's business dirty? Lily asked tentatively. Today, Zhang Hong invited his brothers to come back for dinner and drinks in order to enter the yamen and do the executioner's business. He had been talking about it several times, and he was fine before. Damn, Lily guessed that the change in his kung fu was related to the errand he was planning to do, and sure enough, it was true. As soon as she finished speaking, Zhang Hong reacted this time. He glanced at Lily and did not answer her question. Instead, he asked. Lily, don't you like me being an executioner? Zhang Hong doesn't care about other people's opinions. He doesn't care at all whether he is cheap or not. As long as he lives happily in this life, he will not look down on himself. People's eyes. He didn't care at all. But Ye's words really touched on the hidden worries in his heart. When he said that he wanted to be an executioner, Lily had repeatedly opposed it. At this time, she guessed the problem as soon as she came. This made Zhang Hong hesitate a little. He is not an indecisive person. But it was difficult to make a decision at this time, speaking from the heart, in Zhang Hong's heart. Real money is far more important than the illusory face. If he were alone, or if he was not looking for a wife from such a high family background, there is no telling that he would definitely choose to be an executioner. Executioners are passed down from generation to generation. Although he has an unfavorable reputation, he can always get a reward of silver every time he cuts off his head. Plus the monthly salary from the county is enough for him to support his wife and raise Lily well. But things are different now. Lily was originally from a wealthy family. Although her family is now in decline, she has not suffered enough because it has not been long. Now that the eldest daughter who was born directly from the home mansion has been reduced to a slave, she must be unhappy in her heart. Willingly, such a delicate girl, do you really want her to be like him in the future, from a wealthy village to an executioner's wife? When Zhang Hongii usually calls Lily, he still calls her daughter-in-law even though he knows that Lily doesn't like it. He can't take advantage of her, so he always wants to take advantage of her in his mouth. But now he is so confused that he could no longer shout out the words that he could usually say smoothly. His lips trembled twice, Zhang Hongii asked, and as if he was afraid of hearing Lily's answer, he hurriedly took the bowl and hid in the room. Forget it, let me think about it before I talk. Seeing him running away in a hurry, Lily frowned slightly. In the middle of the afternoon, Zhang Hongii quietly rubbed and hung up his clothes. He didn't speak or do anything. He just sat in the yard in a daze, looking at his hands and feet for a while, with his eyes sometimes sad and sometimes sad. After some struggle, Lily called him several times, but he didn't say anything. Finally, Lily couldn't bear it anymore. She took the water ladle in her hand and hit Zhang Hongii on the head with a snap. Ouch, he screamed while covering his head. The water ladle was originally made by the gourd elder. It was extremely strong, but no matter how strong it was, it couldn't compare to Zhang Hongii's head. As soon as it was hit, he was stunned. He was not hurt by the beating, just shocked, but the gourd shattered in response. He covered his head, with a few strands of broken gourd foam on his forehead, and a few strings of water droplets running down his forehead. The drops wetted a few strands of frizzy hair, flying with teeth and claws. He felt aggrieved and held his head. Why are you beating someone? What did your brothers come over to say at noon? You feel like you have lost your soul. Did someone introduce you to someone? Did your brothers say that I am unreliable and want you to send me away? Lily thought about the worst plan and asked Zhang Hongii. Unexpectedly, when he heard this, he shaved his hair, spread his legs with his hands on his hips, looked at Lily up and down, and suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha, sending you away, he grinned, pretending to be melancholy and overwhelmed before, but now his true form was revealed. Have you got any money? Let me tell you, how much do you owe me? You have money, you can do the math yourself, 5 coppers in 1 day, 25 coppers in 2 days, 25 coppers in 3 days, and so on. You will never be able to pay off your debts in this life, and if you want to run away, you will none. It's impossible to give you away for nothing. He smiled so hard that he couldn't even see his eyes. Lily had just washed his hair in the morning, and now he was scratching it into a mess. Don't take me for granted. Silly, your man knows it all, you can't lie to me. Seeing him like this, Lily stretched out her legs to kick him. Unexpectedly, his calves were strong and hard, as if they were tied with steel plates. He didn't get any pain from the kick. Instead, Lily's toes seemed to have hit the leg of a table, and she gasped in pain. He took a breath and bit his lip. Where does it hurt? Seeing her like this, Zhang Hongii squatted down and grabbed her feet, wanting to show her. Lily reached out and grabbed his hair several times, and he screamed in response, knowing full well that he was not hurt by the tug. But hearing him scream, Lily felt much more comfortable. What did your brothers say? Lily shrank her legs and tried to hide, but Zhang Hongii didn't allow her to dodge at all. He reached out and grabbed her feet. He didn't mind that her shoes were dirty. He hesitated for a while, and then he held her feet in his palms. Inside, he rubbed her toes. Her expression gradually became gentler, and the sneer in her brow seemed to have faded a lot. Up close, Zhang Hongii doesn't look that bad. Although his skin is dark, he also has thick eyebrows and big eyes. It's just that he is usually tall and has tangled muscles. He looks really scary, so when people see him for the first time, she would only be afraid of him and ignore his appearance. His strength increased, and the toes started to hurt when he rubbed them, but they gradually got better. Lily couldn't struggle with him anyway, so she let him go. She just grabbed his hair and motioned for him to lean over. His hair was pulled, but his eyes rolled around and refused to obey. A red vine flew from the base of his neck and ears. He seemed to be breathing a little disorderly. "You woman, why are you pulling my hair? No matter how big or small you are. I am your husband. When you get married, you will obey your husband. You should say it 100 times and remember it in your heart. I won't argue with you this time, but I won't spare you next time." He still couldn't change his tough-tongued character. When Lily heard what he said, she couldn't help but pull his hair several times. He screamed, and seemed to be pulled to him unwillingly. Lily pulled him, her tied hair spread out, and she stretched out her hand towards him. Kong, from your head. Where is the comb?" The last time he bought it, he said it was a comb for himself, but it turned out that he didn't use it and he took it back again. Lily was afraid that he would mention combing her hair again later, so she never took care of the comb. He asked for it, and now he reached out to ask for it. Zhang Hongyi covered his chest in panic, and his big head shook like a rattle. "No." He had a look of death on his face. The comb was not only tangled with her hair, but also with a strand of his own hair. If he took it out now and Lily saw it, Zhang Hongyi would feel as if a very important secret of his was being tangled. It seems like people know. He didn't want anyone to see him, and he didn't even know why. He secretly married Lily in his heart. He didn't want anyone to know such a secret, let alone Lily to see it. Zhang Hongyi himself didn't even know that kind of subtle mood. For what? His eyes were a little panicked, like a frightened rabbit, and his expression showed a guilty conscience. He didn't dare to look at her, and his hands were still covering his chest tightly. When he saw it, the comb was hidden in his chest. Lily was too lazy to say anything to him. Reaching out to touch his chest. With a bang, a red tide spread from Zhang Hongyi's neck and cheeks. He covered his chest with his hands. He could feel his heartbeat speeding up in an instant. His body was stiff. At this time, he didn't care that his hair was still covered by Lily. It was in his hand, and he twisted his body to hide, but he was still holding Lily's feet in his hand. During this hurriedly dodging, he realized that his hair was still being held by Lily, as if his life gate had been taken away and he couldn't run away. By then, the inertia of his body had caused him to sit down on the ground. Lily's foot was in his hand, and his fall was equivalent to pulling Lily. Lily couldn't sit firmly on the chair and fell down. Zhang Hongyi stretched out his hand to help her, but his hand hadn't touched her body yet. She shrank back again as if she was electrocuted, but in the end she sat down on his chest. He was strong and strong, so he was completely fine after receiving this blow. He just felt the girl's soft body sitting on him, her palms still supporting his chest. For a moment, Zhang Hongyi seemed as if he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. Her face was so red that it looked like it was about to bleed, and smoke seemed to be rising from the top of her head. Her body was stiff, and one hand was still holding her foot. She was dumbfounded by the sudden intimacy between the two. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan ERWR. Chapter 1011. Zhang Hongyi was suppressed, and he didn't dare to move. When Lily fell down, she was startled at first, and instinctively grabbed his clothes. But she found that Zhang Hongyi was fine at all, and after catching herself very steadily, he breathed a sigh of relief, first patted Zhang Hongyi's chest, and then reached out to touch the collar he had just held. Her move suddenly seemed to bring Zhang Hongyi, who was already a little stiff, to life. He let go of the hand holding Lily's leg and held her hand tightly. Lily felt his heart beating through her clothes. He was beating like a little rabbit, and Zhang Hongai's lips had begun to tremble a little. His bronze face was now flushed red and purple, and he was obviously very embarrassed. What are you doing?" He looked a little pitiful, without his usual fierce look. His voice was trembling a little when he spoke, his eyes were shaking, he just didn't dare to look at her, and even his cheek muscles were twitching. This look actually made Lily, who was a little nervous, relax and almost want to laugh. Her palms were held tightly by Zhang Hong'ai. In the cold weather in Yingzhou, the back of her hands was cold, but Zhang Hong'ai was wearing thin clothes. But his body was like a heater, and the palms of his hands were very warm. Lily struggled twice, and then answered with a smile. "What are you doing?" "I brought the comb and you brought it down. I didn't blame you. How dare you be so cruel?" She raised her eyebrows, and Zhang Hong'ai stuttered, No, there is no comb." "You're talking nonsense." "I didn't know until I touched it," Lily retorted to him. She didn't know which words she said hit Zhang Hong'ai's Achilles heel. His body felt a little tense at first. The face turned purple at first, then turned black, and then turned red. After a while, he grabbed Lily and jumped up from the ground. He jumped 3 feet high and brought someone with him, but he seemed to I don't feel any weight at all. Lily felt like the world was spinning, and she was already standing up from the ground when he grabbed her. He pushed Lily onto the stool. Look at her sitting firmly. He took 7 or 8 steps back like a frightened rabbit, his face turned red. You woman, are so shameless. Already said. There is no comb, and you still want to touch me. I don't know if I am anxious." His voice was trembling when he spoke. Lily stood up from the stool. When he saw Lily's movement, he jumped back several steps. He stared at her warily at first, then seemed to react. Normally, he turned his head and didn't dare to look at her, and half of his face was as red as a monkey's butt. "What are you ashamed of? It was obviously you who dragged me down, but you still dare to say that I am shameless. Why are you hiding? Come here." Lily took a step forward, and he took a step back. When he finally saw that he was about to leave the yard, he just then, as if he had reacted, he quickly ran out of the gate with agility, grabbed the 2 courtyard doors, and closed the door again with a bang. Just like the situation after getting into trouble that day, Lily pulled twice, "Open the door." "No," he answered firmly, "outside," and Lily replied, "You can hide outside for the rest of your life. If you have the ability, you will stay at the door for the rest of your life." This conversation is somewhat familiar. Zhang Hong'ai bought a comb for her that day, and when he wanted to comb her hair, he got into trouble and ran away. The situation was exactly the same as this time. When he said after a pause, both of them recalled what happened that day, and couldn't help but laugh. The door was locked for him like that day. This time Lily did not leave to cook, but stood in the corner with her chest folded. Not long after, Zhang Hong'ai appeared with his head peeping out from the top of the wall. He carefully exposed only his top hat at first, and then raised it a little higher. He glanced around the room for a few times, but saw no one. Just about to breathe a sigh of relief, when her eyes looked down, they happened to meet Lily standing under the wall. She didn't know how much she had looked at, and at this time she picked up a few pieces of broken wood and threw them at him. She smashed them randomly, and when 1 or 2 pieces hit, he covered his face and cried out in pain, but refused to fall to the ground. After Lily threw the pieces of wood in his hand, he reached out and rubbed his forehead. For some reason, his eyes had become softer. "Daughter-in-law, step aside, I want to jump in." Lily could obviously open the front door, but he wanted to jump out of the wall. Lily took a few steps to the side, and in a few breaths, his body was like a wild goose, holding on with his hands. At the top of the wall, he climbed in with a quick movement. "You're not hiding anymore," Lily asked him, and he shook his head honestly. "I'm not hiding anymore, but I can't give you the comb anymore." "Don't ask, I'll give you a better one in the future." "I heard there's something for that." Fragrant wood is used by wealthy people. The blush on Zhang Hongai's face was not gone, and his voice was not loud. Lily sat back on the chair and waved to him. This time, he honestly walked towards him and stopped hiding. He didn't want to take out the comb, although Lily didn't know it. Why, but everyone should have a secret, so she didn't ask. She stopped asking, and Zhang Hongai felt a little disappointed. But as her slender fingers gently combed his head, the smell of the girl was different from the smell of the rough man on him. The blood in Zhang Hongai's body seemed to be concentrated in his head, and he seemed to be able to hear the blood flowing rapidly in his body. There was a squeaking sound every now and then, and the beating of blood vessels in my mind. Those 10 slender fingers pierced his head, like the mother's gentle and soothing hands when he was a baby. "That's called rosewood," Lily explained softly. Zhang Hongai heard her speak, but in fact he didn't hear what she said at all. He seemed to have stepped on cotton under his feet, and he answered in a daze, "Lily, combing his hair, men and women have different natures." When combing his hair, Zhang Hongai pricked it randomly. The hair had not been combed for a long time and was messy. Lily combed it with her fingers and carefully straightened it out for him one by one. Inadvertently, she saw when she came to a place that was missing about the size of a finger, she brushed Zhang Hongai's hair twice and said, "Zhang Hongai, you have dysentery. Why is there such a big piece of hair missing?" One moment, Zhang Hongai felt like he was swimming in a warm ocean. The next moment, Lily's words rushed towards him like a basin of cold water, chilling him to the core. It took him a while to realize what Lily had said, and he subconsciously stretched out his hand. When he touched it, he became a little annoyed and retorted unwillingly, "You're talking nonsense. I'm only 20, when I was young and strong, how could I have a scabby head?" He stretched out his hand and touched where Lily was pointing. There was indeed a piece of hair missing there, which was particularly obvious compared with the surrounding area. He touched it twice, and suddenly he seemed to remember something. He suddenly shut up and stopped talking, but his cheeks became redder and hotter, and he even became angry with embarrassment. So many questions. Maybe my hair will fall out one day and it will grow back. Why is it a leprous? When he was feeling guilty, his voice would be loud. Lily stretched out her hand to pluck the hairless area of his hair, feeling a little suspicious. There are still some broken hairs, and they are injured and scarred in some places. They seem to have been torn off after she finished speaking. Zhang Hongai obviously wanted to struggle again. He had the experience of trying to escape once. This time he moved, and Lily stretched out her hand. He slapped him on the head. "Don't move," after she yelled. Zhang Hongai was stunned and didn't dare to move. Lily thought for a while and suddenly said, "Could it be? You pulled my hair off that day, and I felt a little sorry, so did you deliberately pull out a strand of hair to compensate me?" Zhang Hongai was already extremely guilty. When he heard this, he felt as if Lily had stabbed him in a sore spot. "Nonsense, nonsense. Am I that kind of person? I didn't mean to hurt you. I've already apologized, and so have you. You have beaten me, let alone now I let you play with my hair. How could I feel guilty? How could I deliberately pull a strand of hair? Please don't talk nonsense, otherwise I will be rude to you. Why are you so loud? It's not right. People with a guilty conscience always talk too much," Lily snorted. Zhang Hongai's face turned even more purple. He was about to jump up, but his hair was pulled by Lily in his hand. He thought about how he jumped just now. When he got up, he also recalled the scene when she fell down. He didn't dare to move, but he was not convinced. "I said no, what do you mean, People with a guilty conscience always talk a lot. I usually talk a lot. He muttered something in his mouth, but Lily ignored him and carefully combed his hair. Some places were frizzy. She even reached into the bucket aside to wet her hands and smoothed Zhang Hongai's frizzy hair with water. She fixed Zhang Hongai's hair on top of her head, and finally took out a square scarf from her arms. This was the green cloth square scarf wrapped around Zhang Hongai's head. Lily washed it first. The sun in Yingzhou is very strong during the day, so such a small piece the towel was washed in the morning and dried at noon. She used it to wrap Zhang Hongai's head, but she thought that the cloth rope he originally tied his head had thrown away because Lily thought it couldn't wash out the color. Now he needs to tie his head. Yes, Lily suddenly remembered the red hair tie that Zhang Hongai gave her that day. She took it out, twisted it around her hair several times, tied it tightly, and added a beautiful bow at the end. Then he patted Zhang Hongai on the head and said, "Okay." When Lily said this, Zhang Hongai didn't react immediately. When she slapped his head, he seemed to remember something and looked at his reflection in the bucket. His originally fierce bronze face was now neatly combed, and the stubble that used to feel prickly was gone. The square scarf was also tied up very neatly. In the impression, he had never been able to tidy it up. It's been organized like this. But the red hair rope seemed a bit inconsistent with his fierce face, and it looked a bit ridiculous, but Zhang Hongai seemed to like it very much and took a long look at the water in the bucket. To be continued.